The Las Vegas Raiders have officially beaten the New Orleans Saints, improving their record to 4-12. This win marks a turning point for the Raiders, as their draft position is no longer the primary focus. Coming into this game, the Raiders held the 6th overall draft pick. A loss would have moved them up to the 5th pick, depending on the outcome of the Jaguars-Titans game. However, with this victory, the Raiders now drop to the 9th overall pick. We'll discuss the draft in more detail later, especially the quarterbacks who stood out yesterday. Some exciting prospects to unpack. What's up, buddies? Welcome back. If you are new here, make sure you hit the subscribe button. We cover all AFC West news here on this channel. Now, first talk about this game. The Raiders looked good in certain aspects, even though it wasn't a flawless performance. Despite all that, Aidan O'Connell has shown promise when given the opportunity. His play hasn't been perfect or transformative. The Raiders aren't scoring 40 points a game, but he's been solid. Right now, I'd categorize him as a backup caliber quarterback. That said, it's not guaranteed the Raiders will overhaul the quarterback position next season. It's entirely possible they stick with the current setup, though the idea of drafting someone like Shedeur Sanders or another promising quarterback remains on the table. We'll dig deeper into those possibilities later. The Raiders' defense continued its impressive streak from the past few weeks. The defense has been absolutely dominant. They've been getting after it even without key players like Max Crosby, and Malcolm Kuntze and Patrick Graham deserves a ton of credit for the way he's managed this unit. Earlier this week, there was a report from Tom Pelissero stating that Graham declined a contract extension with the Raiders. That decision caught my attention. It's easy to speculate that Graham might be eyeing a head coaching opportunity, which could explain why he turned down the extension. Still, it doesn't entirely make sense to me. Graham has orchestrated a very effective defense for the Raiders, and with the right circumstances, like starting the season fully healthy and having a more competent offensive coordinator, the team could have been in a much better position. Imagine if the Raiders had someone like Cliff Kingsbury or Scott Turner calling plays from the start. Things might have looked very different. Despite these challenges, the defense has been exceptional. They've stepped up week after week, and the players deserve recognition. One standout over the past few weeks has been Jack Jones. Sure, he's had some moments where he's given up touchdowns, but that's part of the learning curve. It's important to consider what Patrick Graham might be instructing Jones to do. For instance, it seems like Jones has been told to aggressively jump routes, which has led to some key plays. He had an interception today, and if I'm not mistaken, he also had one last week or the week before. Earlier this season, he even had a pick six. He's been making plays and had multiple pass breakups in this game alone. Isaiah Polamau is another player who's been impressive. Last week, he forced 2 fumbles, and today he made several impactful plays, breaking up passes and stepping up in critical moments, even preventing critical first downs on at least 1 or 2 occasions. If the Raiders keep Patrick Graham as defensive coordinator and Polamau gets a full offseason as a starter, I think he has a real shot at becoming a top 10 safety in the NFL next season. Nate Hobbs also had some standout moments today, and Adam Butler continues to make a name for himself. He got to the quarterback multiple times in this game, even recording a sack, though it might end up being split. Tyree Wilson and Kalavon Chaisson are also stepping up and making plays, which bodes well for the Raiders' defensive future. Thomas Harper deserves a shout-out for snagging his first interception of the season. That play essentially sealed the win for the Raiders and was a great moment for the young player. The defense has been on fire, but let's shift gears to the offense for a bit. The Raiders' offense, while improved, isn't exactly top tier at this point. Losing a true number 1 receiver Davante Adams, who requested a trade earlier, left a significant void. However, since moving on from Luke Getsy as offensive coordinator, we've seen some positive changes. The team has been generating more yards and improving its spacing, though those yards haven't always translated into points. Part of the issue stems from inconsistency at the quarterback position. On the bright side, the run game has started to click, and the offense as a whole looks more cohesive. A big part of this improvement has been making Brock Bowers the focal point. Bowers has been nothing short of dominant, and he deserves a ton of credit for stepping up and being the reliable playmaker this offense needed. Bowers sets 3 different records. His 108 catches on the season is a high watermark for any Raider, breaking the record set by Darren Waller in 2020. Bowers also set an NFL rookie receptions mark, besting Puka Nakua's 105 catches from last year. Most impressively, Bowers' 1,144 receiving yards is the most in NFL history by a rookie tight end, breaking the record held by Mike Ditka since 1961. In today's game, Bowers posted 7 catches for 77 yards, showcasing his incredible ability to stay on his feet and fight for extra yards. Jacoby Myers also contributed with 5 catches for 61 yards, though a couple of those were negated by penalties. Amir Abdullah shined in the run game, racking up 115 yards on 20 carries. The Raiders' rushing attack has significantly improved, and it's no coincidence. Adjustments on the offensive line over the past 5 or 6 weeks have played a big role in this progress. Overall, the offensive line was solid in this game. Aidan O'Connell was sacked just once, and even that was more on him than the line. On a quick three-step drop, O'Connell hesitated, tried to scramble backward, and ultimately got caught. He's not the type of quarterback who can rely on his legs to escape pressure, and that play was a clear example of it. One player who continues to stand out is rookie DJ Glaze. As a third-round pick, he's naturally a developmental project, but his potential is evident. If Glaze puts in the work this offseason, he could become a key piece for the Raiders' future. Right now, his performance has been solid, but there's room for growth. He needs to get quicker and refine his footwork, and while I wouldn't recommend adding weight, building muscle and toning up would enhance his ability to handle top-tier pass rushers. Next season, Glaze should get another year at right tackle to prove himself, regardless of whether Scott Turner or Antonio Pierce leads the team. He's shown enough potential to warrant that opportunity, and if he takes the next step, there's a good chance he could become the long-term solution at the position. While it's too early to crown him as the future, the upside is undeniable. That brings us to the quarterback situation, which will be a hot topic in the offseason. Aidan O'Connell has shown promise, but I'm not entirely sold on him as the long-term answer. And now, with the Raiders holding the 9th overall pick after back-to-back wins, the draft strategy becomes even more intriguing. A loss today could have moved them up to the 5th pick, but sitting at 9th complicates their options. The question now is, where do the Raiders go from here? Do they stick with O'Connell or look to the draft for a potential franchise quarterback? Now, with the last win, I am quite hopeful that the Raiders can pull off a win against the Chargers next week. While the Chargers have likely clinched a playoff spot, their seeding isn't entirely locked in. For the Raiders, why not try to win that final game? A victory would only drop their draft position by 1 spot, and it could make things a little tougher for the Chargers in terms of seeding. Even though they're unlikely to secure home field advantage given the Chiefs' position, making it a more challenging road for them is worth the effort. Next week will also be one more opportunity for O'Connell to prove himself. If he can deliver a clean, consistent performance like he did today, it would help solidify his case for staying in the conversation as the team's quarterback. Well, I'm not entirely sold on Shedeur Sanders as a top option. While he's shown flashes of talent, there are concerns about his decision-making and ability to operate within structure. For instance, in yesterday's game against BYU, there was a critical 2nd and 8 play where a sticks concept was run to the left. Sanders had an open receiver on a quick out route, which could have gained 7 yards, setting up a manageable 3rd and 1 or 3rd and 2. Instead, he decided to take off running and only picked up a single yard. Plays like that highlight his struggles with making the right read under pressure. There are also well-documented moments, like the infamous sack where Sanders ran backward, lost significant yardage, and cost his team a field goal opportunity. Those kinds of decisions are hard to overlook when evaluating his readiness for the NFL. While he may still be a first-round pick, depending on how the quarterback class shapes up, he doesn't strike me as someone the Raiders should build their future around. This brings us back to Aidan O'Connell. While it's clear he's not a guaranteed franchise quarterback, the Raiders may consider giving him another year. That said, I strongly believe the Raiders need to pursue a rookie quarterback in the draft. With the Giants winning today, they've dropped to the 3rd or 4th pick, and the New England Patriots now hold the 1st overall pick. The next few weeks will be critical in shaping the Raiders' offseason strategy. Whether they decide to stick with O'Connell for another year or go all in on drafting a top quarterback, it's clear that the team is at a crossroads. These decisions will determine the future trajectory of the franchise, and the pressure is on to get it right. Alternatively, if the Raiders prefer not to part with their draft capital, they could wait and hope that a quarterback like Shedeur Sanders, Carson Beck, or even Jalen Milroe falls to them. If none of those options feel right, they could always take the best player available and address quarterback in another way, either through free agency or future drafts. That's all for today. Now, it's your turn. What do you think? With the Raiders dropping to the 9th overall pick after this win, should they prioritize drafting a quarterback or focus on building other key areas like defense or the offensive line? Or do you think Aidan O'Connell has done enough to earn another year as the Raiders' starting quarterback? Or should the team look for a new franchise quarterback in the draft? Let's kick off debate in the comment section. And yes, do not forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel.